The deadliest discovery. The advanced xenobiology classroom at the Galactic Defense Academy hummed with nervous energy as students from 12 different species settled into their bioadaptive seats. The room's walls displayed a living star map, constellations shifting and pulsing with the rhythm of distant suns. Professor Vextal clicked his way to the front, his 6 legs creating a rhythmic percussion against the metallic floor. His compound eyes reflected the ambient light like 1,000 tiny mirrors, each one capable of processing visual data that would overwhelm most organic minds. Today's lesson concerns classified material, Professor Vextal announced, his voice creating harmonic frequencies that his universal translator converted into understandable speech for each species present. What you are about to witness has been deemed too psychologically disturbing for lower-level courses. His mandibles clicked together in what his species considered a warning gesture. We are studying apex predators from the rim worlds, creatures so perfectly evolved for killing that they have shaped entire ecosystems around fear. Cadet Zaraki, a tall reptilian from the desert kingdoms, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her scales rippled with patterns that indicated curiosity mixed with apprehension. Beside her, Cadet Blint's crystalline form refracted the ambient light into nervous rainbows across the walls. The ice being's internal temperature had dropped several degrees, a clear sign of stress among his people. In the back corner of the classroom, Maya Chen sat with quiet attention. The human exchange student had grown accustomed to being the only member of her species in most classes. Earth was still considered a backwater world by galactic standards, and humans were viewed as a curiosity rather than a serious addition to the galactic community. Maya had learned to keep her observations to herself, having discovered early in her academy career that her perspectives often confused or disturbed her alien classmates. Professor Vextal gestured with 4 of his arms, and the classroom's holographic display system activated. The lights dimmed, casting the room in an eerie blue glow that seemed to make shadows dance in the corners. The footage you are about to see was recovered from a research expedition to the 3rd planet of the Sol system. The team was studying what they believed to be a primitive world with limited predatory threats. His voice dropped to a whisper that made several students lean forward. They were catastrophically wrong. The hologram materialized in the center of the room, showing a dense forest shrouded in mist. Ancient trees stretched impossibly high, their canopy blocking most natural light. The camera moved with the jerky motion of someone trying to remain hidden while recording. Suddenly, a shadow moved between the trees, silent as death itself. Observe the subject designated as Shadow Walker by the research team, Professor Vextal continued. Notice how it moves without disturbing the forest floor. No broken branches, no scattered leaves. This creature has evolved perfect stealth capabilities. The shadow in the footage paused, and for a moment, 2 yellow eyes reflected the camera's infrared sensors. The eyes held an intelligence that seemed to peer directly through the hologram and into the souls of the watching students. Zaraki's scales had turned a pale shade of green that indicated fear among her people. "Professor," she whispered, "surely, this is enhanced footage. No natural predator could possess such perfect camouflage abilities." "I assure you the footage is unaltered," Vextal replied. The hologram zoomed in, revealing more details of the creature. It stood roughly shoulder-high to an average humanoid, but its build suggested raw power barely contained within a lean frame. Dense fur covered muscle that rippled with each careful step. Most disturbing were the teeth, fangs designed for gripping and tearing, set in jaws powerful enough to crush bone. The Shadow Walker possesses several attributes that make it the perfect predator. The professor continued, highlighting different aspects of the creature as he spoke. Enhanced night vision allows it to hunt in complete darkness. Acute hearing can detect heartbeats from over a kilometer away. Its sense of smell is so refined that it can track prey for days across varied terrain. But perhaps most terrifying of all is its endurance. The footage shifted to show the creature moving at a steady lope through the forest. Its breathing remained controlled, its pace never varying despite covering enormous distances. Unlike predators that rely on burst, speed or ambush tactics, the Shadow Walker can maintain pursuit for hours, even days. It literally runs its prey to exhaustion. The psychological impact of being hunted by such a creature is beyond measurement. Blint's crystalline form had begun resonating at a frequency that created an uncomfortable whine in the air. "Professor, how did any life form on this world survive long enough to evolve past basic organisms? Such perfect predators would have eliminated all other life forms within a few generations." Professor Vextal's mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. An excellent question that leads us to the most disturbing aspect of our study. Observe. The hologram changed to show multiple Shadow Walkers moving together through the forest. They communicated through subtle body language and sounds too low for most species to hear. Their coordination was flawless, each creature knowing exactly where the others were without visible signals. "They hunt in groups called packs," Vextal explained. "These packs demonstrate strategic thinking that rivals military units. They assign roles: scouts, flankers, finishers. They coordinate complex ambushes across kilometers of terrain. They've been observed using psychological warfare, allowing prey to catch glimpses of pack members to drive victims toward prepared killing grounds." The classroom had fallen completely silent except for the nervous physiological responses of various species. Zaraki's scales were now showing stress patterns that bordered on panic. Blint had dimmed his internal luminescence to nearly invisible levels, a defensive response common to his people when faced with overwhelming threat displays. Intelligence estimates suggest these creatures possess problem-solving abilities equivalent to military strategists, Professor Vextal continued relentlessly. They adapt their hunting methods based on prey behavior. They pass knowledge between generations through complex social structures. Most terrifyingly, they appear to hunt sometimes, purely for the psychological satisfaction of the chase, not from hunger. A student from the methane courts raised a gaseous appendage. Surely no intelligent species could have evolved on the same world as these monsters. The constant terror would prevent any civilization from developing. That assumption, Professor, Vextal said slowly, brings us to the most disturbing revelation of our research. The hologram shifted again, now showing structures that were clearly artificial. Buildings, vehicles, and technology that indicated an advanced civilization. Bipedal figures moved about their daily activities, completely unaware that Shadow Walkers could be observed at the edges of the settlement, watching from the tree line. The world-designated Earth is not only home to these apex predators, but also to an intelligent species that has somehow not only survived their presence, but has thrived alongside them. The professor's voice carried a tone of disbelief that his translator struggled to convey. Archaeological evidence suggests the two species have coexisted for tens of thousands of years. The room erupted in confused chatter. The concept was so alien to most species that many couldn't process it. How could any intelligent life form develop under such constant threat? How could civilization advance when perfect predators stalked the edges of every settlement? Maya had been listening with growing amusement, recognizing the creature in the footage despite the dramatic presentation. She'd grown up with similar animals, though she knew better than to interrupt with corrections about domestication and selective breeding. Her human perspective on predator-prey relationships had caused enough confusion in previous classes. Furthermore, Professor Vextal continued, raising his voice above the concerned discussions, evidence suggests that rather than eliminating these apex predators, the intelligent species on Earth actually formed some kind of alliance with them. Archaeological sites show remains of Shadow Walkers deliberately buried with honors typically reserved for important individuals of the intelligent species. The silence that followed was profound. The concept was so incomprehensible to most galactic species that their mental frameworks couldn't process it. Form alliances with perfect predators? The idea violated every evolutionary survival instinct that had allowed their civilizations to develop. A small sound from the back of the classroom caught everyone's attention. Maya had snorted softly, the human equivalent of suppressed laughter. All eyes turned to her, and she suddenly realized the entire class was staring at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. "Miss Chen," Professor Vextal said carefully, Do you have something to add to our discussion? Maya looked around the classroom, noting the terrified expressions of her classmates. She'd learned to be careful with her observations, but the dramatic presentation of what was clearly a wolf had struck her as almost comical. I'm sorry, Professor, it's just... She gestured at the hologram where the wolf was now resting peacefully in a patch of sunlight. That's a beautiful animal. Probably a male, maybe 4 or 5 years old, looks well-fed and healthy. The silence that followed was deafening. Professor Vextal's compound eyes all focused on Maya with mechanical precision. You can determine specific characteristics of this apex predator from observation? Well, yes, Maya replied, suddenly aware that she might have said too much. Wolves are pretty easy to read once you know what to look for. This one's definitely from a successful pack. See how relaxed he is? And the way his ears are positioned suggests he's listening to pack members nearby, probably his mate and cubs. Zaraki's scales had now turned completely white, a color that among her people indicated a fear so profound it bordered on shock. You speak of this creature as though you have personal experience with shadow walkers. Maya smiled, the expression somehow both innocent and terrifying to her alien classmates. I wouldn't call them shadow walkers, but yes, I grew up around wolves. My family had one when I was little. She paused, remembering. His name was Storm, and he was my best friend. The bond beyond understanding. The classroom atmosphere had shifted from academic curiosity to something approaching religious awe. Professor Vextal's 6 legs had locked in place, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display as his complex mind struggled to process what he was hearing. Around the room, students from a dozen different species sat in various states of shock, their physiological responses ranging from Zaraki's now completely colorless scales to Blint's crystalline form flickering like a dying star. Maya seemed completely unaware of the impact her casual statement had created. In her mind, she was remembering long summer days running through the forest near her family's research station, always accompanied by the massive gray and white form of Storm. The wolf-dog hybrid had been her constant companion from age 5 to 15, when old age finally claimed him. Miss Chen, Professor Vextal said with extreme care, when you say your family had one of these creatures, could you clarify the nature of this relationship? His translator was working overtime to convey concepts that had no equivalent in most galactic languages. The idea of voluntarily cohabitating with an apex predator was so alien that many species lacked words for such behavior. Maya tilted her head thoughtfully. Storm was our family dog, though he was mostly wolf genetically. Dad was studying wildlife behavior, and Mom was a veterinarian, so they specialized in working with hybrid animals that needed special care. She gestured at the hologram, where the wolf was now stretching in a patch of sunlight. Storm was rescued as a pup after his pack was killed in a landslide. He imprinted on our family and lived with us for 10 years. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Cadet Morthek, a gas-based life form from the nebula colonies, expressing what could only be described as existential terror through rapid molecular vibrations. The concept of adopting an apex predator as a family member had short-circuited his understanding of survival behavior. Zaraki managed to find her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. You lived in the same dwelling as this perfect killing machine? For 10 years? Her reptilian brain was trying to process the concept and failing completely. In her species' evolutionary history, the first rule of survival had been to flee from anything with superior predatory capabilities. He wasn't a killing machine, Maya said with gentle correction. Storm was incredibly gentle, especially with children. He used to walk me to the school transport every morning about 2 miles through pretty dense wilderness. My parents knew I was completely safe with him. She smiled at the memory. He was like having the world's most effective bodyguard, but one who also played fetch and helped with homework by providing moral support. Professor Vextal's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Miss Chen, you are describing voluntary interaction with an apex predator in a protective capacity. This defies every known model of evolutionary survival behavior. How did your species develop such unusual psychological frameworks? Maya considered the question seriously. I guess humans have always been a little different that way. We don't see predators as automatically threatening if they're not actually threatening us. Storm never showed any aggression toward our family, so we never treated him as dangerous. She paused, trying to explain concepts that seemed obvious to her but were clearly revolutionary to her classmates. Think about it from Storm's perspective, she continued. He was alone, injured, and facing certain death without our help. We provided food, shelter, medical care, and companionship. In return, he provided protection, loyalty, and friendship. It was a mutually beneficial relationship. Blint's crystalline form was now pulsing with patterns that indicated complete cognitive overload. But the risk assessment algorithms alone should have prevented such behavior. One miscalculation, one moment of predatory instinct activation, and the creature could have killed your entire family unit. Could have, but wouldn't have, Maya replied with quiet confidence. You're thinking like prey animals, not like humans. We don't base our relationships on worst-case scenarios. We base them on observed behavior and earned trust. She looked around the room at the terrified faces of her classmates. Storm protected me from actual threats dozens of times. Wild boars, aggressive territorial animals, even a few humans with bad intentions. He never hurt anyone who didn't pose a real danger. Cadet Yexra, a hive-minded insectoid from the core worlds, spoke through her translator with harmonics that indicated profound confusion. Your species forms emotional bonds with creatures capable of killing you instantly? This suggests either supreme evolutionary confidence or complete psychological instability. Maya laughed, a sound that made several students flinch. To many species, laughter was either unknown or associated with predatory behavior. Maybe a little of both, she admitted. Humans have this weird tendency to befriend things that should probably eat us. We've domesticated wolves into dogs, turned wild horses into transportation, even convinced some big cats to live in our houses and catch mice for us. The hologram flickered as Professor Vextal adjusted the display, now showing archaeological footage of ancient cave paintings depicting humans alongside various animals. The historical record supports Miss Chen's statements, he said reluctantly. Evidence suggests that humans have been forming alliances with predatory species for over 30,000 years. The evolutionary advantage of such behavior remains completely mysterious. Zaraki had managed to regain some color in her scales, though they still showed stress patterns. But how do you overcome the fear response? The presence of such a perfect predator should trigger every survival instinct your species possesses. That's just it, Maya explained patiently. Once you understand that the predator isn't actually hunting you, the fear response disappears. Storm taught me to read wolf body language, to understand pack dynamics, to move through the forest without disturbing wildlife. He was basically my teacher as much as my protector. She stood up and moved to the holographic display, pointing out details that the alien students had missed. Look at this wolf's posture. See how his tail is positioned? He's relaxed but alert, probably listening to his pack members nearby. His ears are forward, but not rigid, indicating curiosity rather than aggression. This is a healthy, confident animal in his own territory. Professor Vextal watched with fascination as Maya demonstrated an intuitive understanding of predator behavior that exceeded his own academic knowledge. Miss Chen, how did you acquire such detailed knowledge of these creatures' behavioral patterns? 10 years of daily interaction, she replied simply. When you live with a pack animal, you learn their language whether you intend to or not. Storm taught me to hunt, to track, to understand forest ecosystems from a predator's perspective. I probably understand wilderness survival better than most military specialists, and it's all because I grew up with a wolf. The classroom had fallen into an awed silence. The concept of a young member of an intelligent species learning survival skills from an apex predator was so far beyond their comprehension that many students had simply stopped trying to process the information. Cadet Morthek managed to stabilize his molecular vibrations enough to ask, "What happened to this storm creature? Did it eventually succumb to predatory instincts and become dangerous?" Maya's expression softened with obvious affection and sadness. Storm lived to be 15, which is incredibly old for a wolf hybrid. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by our whole family. I was away at university, but I flew home immediately, when Mom called. We buried him in his favorite spot overlooking the valley where he used to patrol. She paused, lost in memory for a moment. The last few years of his life, when he was too old to walk long distances, I used to carry him out to the meadow where he could watch the sunset. He'd rest his head on my shoulder, and I could feel him purring like an enormous cat. She smiled at her alien classmates who were staring at her with expressions of complete bewilderment. On summer days when I was really small, probably 6 or 7, he'd let me ride on his back while he patrolled the forest boundaries. I felt like I was flying. The silence that followed was profound. Every alien in the room was trying to process the image of a small human child riding on the back of an apex predator, like it was the most natural thing in the world. For most species, such behavior would have been not just dangerous, but psychologically impossible. Professor Vextal's voice was barely above a whisper when he finally spoke. Your species doesn't just survive alongside perfect predators. You form family bonds with them. You learn from them. You trust them with your most vulnerable members. His compound eyes reflected the holographic wolf in thousands of tiny fragments. Perhaps humans are the most successful survivors in the galaxy, not despite their unusual relationship with predators, but because of it. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Maybe. All I know is that Storm made me a better person. He taught me loyalty, courage, and how to protect the people I care about. Pretty good lessons from something you call a killing machine. She looked around the classroom one more time, taking in the stunned faces of her classmates. Besides, once you've had a wolf as your best friend, very few things in the galaxy seem particularly frightening.